March 18, 1945. Poland. The early spring air is biting, carrying the metallic tang of snow melting on stone streets. Inside the convent kitchen, the smell of onion, carrot, and simmering broth fills the small space. A quiet, almost sacred hush has settled. But outside, the war waits, always waiting. 50 men sit in the sunlit dining hall, their polished SS boots scraping against the wooden floor. Uniforms crisp, medals glinting. Their laughter is brittle, echoing against the whitewashed walls. Not one of them suspects the danger quietly moving through the convent's corridors. Sister Maria Antonyina wipes her hands on her habit, heart pounding. She is in her late 30s, with sharp grey eyes and a jaw set like steel. For months, she has lived in the shadow of fear, tending to wounded locals, hiding Jews, watching the SS patrol the streets like predators circling a cage. Today, she carries nothing but a vial of arsenic hidden in her apron, and a quiet determination that feels heavier than the world outside. The officers dip their spoons into the golden soup, steam curling upward in lazy swirls. Every bubble, every clink of cutlery, is a countdown. Maria watches them, hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of choice. One wrong movement, one sniff of suspicion, and it could all end here. What happens next will shock you, and 94% of people who click away before the 3-minute mark miss the most unbelievable part. Don't be one of them. She moves among the tables, pouring the soup with the grace of someone who has rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. The officers chatter, oblivious. One glances at her and offers a faint smirk. She returns a serene nod. Beneath the calm, a storm of moral struggle rages. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell us, where in the world are you watching this from? Let's see how far this story reaches. A sudden cough. A fork drops. The first officer stiffens. Maria's lips barely twitch. The hall is still bright with sunlight, but shadows seem longer now, darker. A strange silence falls over the room. Something is shifting, something irreversible. And then, the first bite is swallowed. Every eye is on the soup. Every heartbeat counts. The convent, the officers, the soup, all are poised on the edge of history. One moment from now, everything will change. Poland, early 1945. The war is unraveling, but the violence has not stopped. Cities lie in ruins, trains carry refugees like drifting ghosts, and the Gestapo and SS patrols roam the countryside with ruthless efficiency. Every village, every convent, every quiet home feels the weight of occupation. The Nazis are desperate to stamp out resistance, yet fear and rumor breed defiance in the shadows. Convents like the one Sister Maria calls home are no longer merely houses of prayer. They have become fortresses of hope for the innocent and hunted. Children whose parents were taken in the night, Jews hidden in attics, and wounded partisans, all find temporary sanctuary within their stone walls. Yet every creak in the floorboards, every shuttered window, carries a question. Will the SS find us today? Sister Maria had witnessed horrors that would haunt most a lifetime. Reports of mass executions, forced labor, and arbitrary terror were a constant background hum. By day, she tended to the sick and wounded, offering comfort where she could. By night, she whispered prayers not just for souls, but for the courage to do what might be necessary to survive. The convent's role was not unique, but its proximity to SS headquarters in the region made it particularly dangerous. Officers sometimes visited under the guise of inspections, sampling meals, checking records, or simply asserting their dominance. These visits were calculated, intimidating, and often deadly. Within this environment of fear and moral compromise, ordinary acts of kindness became revolutionary. A loaf of bread handed to a starving child, a bandage applied to a partisan's wound, even a whispered warning, each was a subtle act of rebellion. Yet for Sister Maria, subtle was no longer enough. With the war in its final months, she saw a rare, fleeting opportunity to strike a blow that could save lives, punish the oppressors, and leave a mark on history. The tension is palpable. Every decision carries life or death consequences, and the convent is a pressure cooker of fear, courage, and moral conflict. This is the stage on which the story of the Golden Soup unfolds, a story where courage is measured not in guns or tanks, but in choices made under the crushing weight of terror. Every day, the SS's shadow grew larger. Every step toward defiance carried consequences unimaginable. And yet, for Sister Maria, there was no turning back. The die was cast, and history was waiting. Sister Maria Antonyina was not a soldier. She was not trained in combat, espionage, or sabotage. Yet in the crucible of occupied Poland, she had become a quiet force of resistance, a guardian in a world gone mad. Born Maria Novak in 1907 in the small town of Lublin, she had grown up tending gardens, helping neighbors, and attending Mass with a devotion that bordered on obsession. Her eyes, steel gray and unyielding, reflected a mind always calculating, always observing. By the time the war reached her convent, she was in her late 30s, small in stature but formidable in presence. The habit she wore was a shield, concealing the depth of her knowledge of chemistry and the clandestine networks operating around her. She had learned to move silently, to speak little, and to watch everything. Every whisper of fear, every footstep outside the walls, every glance from an officer, she catalogued it all. Despite the horrors she had witnessed, the burned villages, the prisoners dragged through the streets, the wails of the captured, Maria retained a certain gentleness. She was known among the local children as kind, among the sick as patient, and among her fellow nuns as determined beyond reason. But beneath that calm exterior lay a fire, one that would ignite when the opportunity for justice, or revenge, presented itself. It was a moral compass, sharpened by years of devotion and observation, that guided her decisions. She did not seek glory. She did not crave recognition. What drove her was a profound sense of duty, to God, to the innocent, and to the oppressed. And yet, in March 1945, duty would demand something extraordinary, terrifying, and deadly. Even the SS officers were beginning to notice her. Not for her courage, at least, not yet, but for her quiet intelligence, her composure under scrutiny, and her uncanny ability to remain calm when chaos hovered at the edges of the convent. They saw a nun. They did not see a strategist, a guardian, or a woman prepared to turn the tables on 50 of the most feared men in Europe. Every small habit revealed who she was: the way she clasped her hands in prayer, the precision with which she prepared meals, the sharp glance that could silence chatter in a room. These were the tools of her survival. And soon, they would become the instruments of something much larger. In the shadow of the war, Sister Maria Antonyina was ready to step from quiet obedience into history-altering defiance. It started like any other Sunday, the sun slanting through the convent windows, dust motes dancing in the golden light, the scent of fresh bread mingling with the sweet aroma of simmering soup. But there was an unease in the air, a ripple Maria could feel in her bones. A distant rumble of boots on cobblestones grew louder. Voices shouted orders. Windows rattled. The SS had arrived unannounced. 50 men, precise, disciplined, eyes sharp with suspicion, marched through the gates. Their presence was more than an inspection, it was a hunt. Maria watched from the shadows, counting medals, noting the insignia: Sturmbannführer Kessler, Hauptsturmführer Braun, Obersturmführer Vogel. High-ranking officers, known for cruelty that left entire villages in flames. The nuns and staff froze. Children clutched their blankets. Every heartbeat in the convent seemed amplified, echoing in the halls like a drum of warning. Maria's hands clenched at her sides. One wrong step could mean immediate execution for everyone inside. She swallowed a lump of fear. The officers inspected the dining hall, tapping silverware, glancing at the crucifix above the altar as if testing whether God himself was watching, or complicit. Their laughter, sharp and mocking, contrasted with the suffocating tension. A single misstep, a whispered word, a nervous glance, and the consequences would be fatal. Then came the order: soup. The officers took their seats, expecting routine. They did not see Maria's eyes, cold but resolute, tracking every man, every movement. She moved silently between tables, her fingers brushing the vial of arsenic hidden beneath her apron, feeling the weight of its promise and its peril. Fear twisted her stomach, but so did clarity. She realized there was no room for hesitation. This moment was her crucible, a choice between passive survival and active resistance. The convent, the children, the hidden fugitives, their lives depended on her courage. Outside, the sound of boots marching back and forth on the courtyard stones marked the countdown. Each officer's spoon dipped into the soup. Each breath drawn was a reminder. History hangs in balance here, in this room, in these few minutes. Maria's pulse raced. Her decision was made. And yet, just as the first spoonful was raised to trembling lips, the quiet horror began. The moment had arrived where ordinary life collided with the extraordinary, and one small act could change everything. The tension was unbearable. Every second stretched into eternity. Sister Maria stood in the shadowed corner of the dining hall, the vial of arsenic pressing cold against her fingers. Her pulse thrummed like a war drum, each beat echoing in her skull. She had never imagined herself here, not as a soldier, not as an executioner, not as the arbiter of 50 lives. Yet here she was, poised at the edge of history. She thought of the children huddled in the convent's attic, of the hidden families relying on her courage, of the villagers who had vanished under the boots of these very officers. Each thought sharpened her resolve. This was not murder. It was justice. It was survival. It was resistance carved from desperation. Her mind raced. Could one woman truly alter the course of fate? Every ethical lesson she had absorbed in decades of devotion clashed violently with the grim reality before her. The teachings of mercy and sanctity of life wrestled with the cries of the innocent she could no longer ignore. The convent had been a haven, but now it was a battlefield. She inhaled deeply, tasting the tension in the air. The officers laughed, shared jokes, flicked crumbs into their soup bowls, unaware that history was about to pivot on a teaspoon of golden liquid. Maria's hand shook. Her lips moved silently in prayer, not for forgiveness, but for courage. Time seemed to stretch. Each second was a pendulum swinging toward inevitability. One thought crystallized. Inaction would cost far more lives than action ever could. This was the moment where morality met necessity. With a quiet exhale, she uncapped the vial and let a few drops fall into the simmering soup. The golden broth rippled, catching the sunlight like liquid gold. Every movement was precise, practiced, almost reverent. She poured it into the communal tureen, stirring gently as if blessing the meal rather than condemning men who had caused untold suffering. A final glance at the officers, their oblivious faces shining with arrogance and ignorance, steeled her resolve. She had crossed a line, yes, but in doing so, she had embraced a role the world would scarcely believe, a nun-turned agent of vengeance. And just like that, the die was cast. Every spoonful drawn from that tureen carried consequences no one could predict. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable, a quiet calm before an unimaginable storm. Sister Maria Antonyina, ordinary woman, devout nun, and now the architect of a deadly resistance, stepped back. She had made the choice. And in moments, the convent's history would be rewritten forever. The first spoonful rises. Steam curls in thin, ghostly ribbons from the bowl, drifting toward the ceiling like silent prayers. 50 SS officers, men decorated for brutality, sit shoulder to shoulder, unaware that death is already warming their throats. Sister Maria stands near the doorway, hands clasped tightly, forcing them to stay still. Her heartbeat slams against her ribs. She watches every face, every gesture, every breath. The room is bright with sunlight, but beneath it lurks a gathering darkness. Obersturmführer Fogel swallows first. A casual mouthful. A satisfied hum. He dips his spoon back in. 2 tables over, Braun compliments the soup's richness. Others nod, savoring the buttery texture, the caramelized onions, the delicate herbs. They taste warmth and comfort. They do not taste the arsenic. Not yet. Maria's knees feel weak. Her palms are slick. She presses her back against the cold stone wall to steady herself. This is the moment everything pivots. The entire plan could still unravel. A strange expression, a sudden suspicion, a tongue detecting bitterness. One question could expose her. One officer looking too closely at her trembling hands could end it all. Instead, another spoonful. Then another. And another. The golden soup is being devoured. She feels a shiver crawl up her spine. The officers talk about the collapsing Eastern Front, about evacuations, about the final victory they still pretend is coming. Their arrogance hangs in the air like smoke. Then it happens. A cough. Sharp. Sudden. Fogel's hand goes to his throat. His spoon clatters against the bowl. A A second cough. A third. A low groan rises at the far end of the table. Maria's breath catches. She watches as confusion spreads like a slow-moving ripple. Officers glance at one another, blinking, frowning, gripping the edges of the long wooden table as if the world is tilted beneath them. Hauptsturmführer Braun reaches for his glass of water, then stops, eyes widening. His pupils shrink. Sweat beads across his forehead. His lips tremble. A soldier stands abruptly, knocking over his chair. Another vomits onto the floor. Another slumps forward, face first into his bowl of soup. The room explodes into chaos. Boots scrape. Chairs topple. Men gasp, choke, claw at their collars as if trying to tear the poison out of their throats. Sister Maria forces herself not to move, not to speak, not to break the mask of innocence. Inside, her nerves are scorched raw. She can feel the vibration of panic in the air, the officers' breaths thinning, their bodies weakening. Arsenic works quickly when dosed precisely. And Maria had been precise. One officer tries to stand but collapses against the table, dragging silverware and bowls crashing to the floor. Another clutches at Braun, begging for help he cannot give. Their voices rise, frantic, strangled, terrified. The convent, moments ago peaceful, is now a torn battlefield of agony. And through it all, Sister Maria does not flinch. She simply watches history unfold. But the chaos inside the hall is nothing compared to what happens next outside those doors. The dining hall falls eerily silent. Then, like a dam bursting, panic erupts in every direction. The screams of dying officers echo through the stone corridors, bouncing off crucifixes and prayer candles. Nuns clamp their hands over their mouths. Children upstairs begin to cry. Even the birds outside scatter at the thunder of chaos. Sister Maria stands frozen in place, her eyes fixed forward, her expression a perfect mask of horrified confusion. She cannot blink. She cannot breathe. She cannot falter. Any deviation from innocence could be fatal. The first officer collapses against a bench. Another falls to his knees, blood gathering under his nose. A third claws desperately at the front door, leaving a smear of red across the wood. Their bodies spasm, muscles contracting violently. Their gasps turn to gurgles. One by one, they crumple, some slamming against the floorboards so hard the room vibrates. Maria forces herself to step forward. She must act like the others. She must play her role. She kneels beside one of the officers, an SS Sturmscharführer clutching his throat, and murmurs a prayer. Her hands hover just above his trembling body. She whispers, "God have mercy," loud enough for witnesses to hear. No one notices that her hands never quite touch him. Outside, the sound of boots grows louder. Guards. Reinforcements. They rush toward the hall, rifles ready. Maria's heart slams against her ribs, hard enough she thinks they might hear it. When the guards burst in, the scene freezes them. 50 officers twisting and writhing on the floor. Bowls overturned. The smell of vomit and panic thick in the air. Some guards shout for medics. Others kneel beside the fallen, shouting names. A few stand still, their lips trembling, the shock too great to process. One guard grabs Maria by the arm. "What happened here?" She swallows, eyes widened with terror she doesn't have to fake. They ate. And then they began to fall. The guard curses under his breath, scanning the room. "Poison," he mutters. "Had to be." His eyes strain, searching for a culprit. Searching for an explanation. But who would suspect a nun with trembling hands and a frightened voice? In the chaos, Maria slips away to the corridor, pretending to steady herself against the wall. Her legs wobble, but she forces her breathing to slow. She cannot afford collapse, not yet. Within minutes, word spreads. The region's chain of command is thrown into disarray. Radios crackle. Officers shout over each other. High-ranking SS personnel from neighboring towns begin arriving by truck and motorcycle, demanding answers. A cover-up begins almost immediately. Not to protect Maria, but to protect the SS's pride. 50 senior officers killed in one afternoon? By food. At a convent? If the story leaked, It would humiliate their command. So they locked the doors, confiscated the bodies, erased reports, and interrogated everyone inside the convent. Everyone, except Maria, because no one imagined the quiet nun had been the one to bring an SS headquarters to its knees. But the danger wasn't over. There was one more test. One more moment where everything could still fall apart. And it was coming fast. Maria is summoned. A knock echoes through the convent like a death toll. Hard. Sharp. Final. 2 guards stand at a door, stone-faced, rifles slung across their chests. You. Sister Maria. Report to the rector's office. Now. Her blood goes cold. Every instinct in her body screams to run, but she bows her head and follows. The walk down the corridor feels endless. Shadows stretch across the floor like reaching hands. The faint scent of incense lingers in the air, but it does nothing to calm her racing thoughts. At the end of the hall sits Father Anselm's office. Except this time, it isn't the priest waiting inside. A high-ranking SS Obersturmbannführer stands behind the desk, his gloves laid neatly beside a stack of confiscated documents. His uniform is immaculate. His jaw set like carved stone. His cold, pale eyes lift to Maria the moment she steps through the door. The door shuts behind her with a heavy thud. Sister, he says quietly. Too quietly. Sit. Maria lowers herself onto the wooden chair, keeping her hands folded neatly in her lap. She keeps her breathing steady. She keeps her expression neutral. She keeps her pulse from revealing the storm inside her chest. The officer studies her, wordless at first. Measuring her. A predator staring at prey. We have spoken to every nun in this convent, he says finally. Every kitchen worker. Every child who may have seen something. Maria nods. I will help in any way I can. His eyebrow lifts, amused. Will you? He reaches into a folder and places something on the desk. A metal spoon. One of the spoons used at the final meal. Its edge is slightly dulled, exactly as Maria had prepared it to be. But the officer doesn't know that. Tell me, sister, why was this spoon found under a pew in the chapel? Maria blinks. The spoon. She never carried it. Never touched it. Never left the hall. Someone else must have dropped it in the panic. My children often leave objects scattered, she says softly. I didn't see it. I am sorry. He doesn't look convinced. He leans closer. 50 of my officers are dead. 50. In 1 hour. Whatever poisoned them was precise. Efficient. Not crude. Not accidental. Maria lowers her eyes. It was God's will. The officer slams his fist into the desk. There is no God here. The room shudders. Papers lift and settle. Maria's breath catches, but she doesn't flinch. She can't. She won't. He exhales slowly, regaining control. Poison of this sophistication requires medical knowledge. Chemical knowledge. Someone trained. Someone intelligent. His voice softens, becoming almost curious. Are you intelligent, sister? Maria keeps her face blank, detached, like marble carved into the likeness of a woman. I am obedient, she whispers. Nothing more. A long, dark silence fills the office. Then, unexpectedly, the officer smirks. You may go. Maria's heart nearly stops. She rises carefully, her legs trembling under her habit. But as she reaches for the door, his voice slices the air behind her. Oh, and sister. She freezes. He continues. God may not exist in this war, but the devil does. A pause. And he was here today. Maria steps into the hallway before her composure breaks. Once the door clicks shut behind her, she grips the wall to keep from collapsing. Her lungs burn. Her vision fades to the edges. But she made it. She survived the one room no one walks out of alive. Yet even through the relief, another realization crashes over her. The SS won't stop searching. They will bring scientists, doctors, investigators. They will tear this place apart brick by brick. and if they find even one clue, the convent will burn, and everyone inside it. Maria whispers a silent prayer, because the war inside these walls has only just begun.